everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I've got the Parish of Rock back. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. Lovely to be back. Looking forward to this.
Good to see you, mate. We are going to do an album battle as part of the Deep Purple family. And this time we're going to pick two albums from 1981, Gillan, Future Shock versus the double LP, Double Trouble from 1981. Two albums, Parish, change of guitarists. Future Shock had Bernie Tormé, the wild guitarist, the wild Irishman. And then it was Yannick Gears that took over the reins in Double Trouble. So as we normally do, we have a little bit of a reflection of our first encounter with the albums. Then we do a bit of a deep dive song by song. And then at the end, we give our opinion, 2025, who we think is the better album. So going back in time, were you a Gillan fan in the day in 1981? Did you see Gillan?
No, I wasn't. I'd say far from it, really. So, I mean, as a confession to make to start with, I'm not actually a big Ian Gillan fan, full stop. I much prefer David Coverdale as a singer in Purple. I've seen Gillan live a few times. I think he's good. But I don't know, there's just something about his vocals that I just think a little bit screechy and screamy, which is odd because I tend to like screechy and screamy singers normally. But it's just, I don't know, there's just something with his vocals that don't quite gel. And so when you come to these albums, I had several issues with these albums at the time, so I never bought them at the time. So my first issue is, I'm not particularly an Ian Gillan fan. Now, put that into context, I absolutely love Rainbow, every era of Rainbow, and I absolutely love Whitesnake. So this isn't an anti sort of Deep Purple thing or a post-Deep Purple thing. I generally like all of that stuff, but for some reason, Gillan, and particularly Gillan by himself, I struggled with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I found it all a bit disingenuous at the time. So I was big on punk and new wave in the late 70s, big on big on the new wave of British heavy metal. And then you've got this person who's come along to me, who's a 16-year-old, who thinks he's a dinosaur. And these albums sound to me as if he's trying to fit in with the new wave of British heavy metal, whereas Rainbow and Whitesnake seem more authentic. They seem like they were doing their thing. I know maybe a bit later Rainbow went a bit sort of foreigner, but even that seemed genuine. You got the feeling they actually wanted to do that. But this to me didn't sound particularly authentic. It felt false. So as a result of that, I just couldn't get into it very much. But I heard the albums a lot, which is the third reason that put me off them. I had a friend called Guy who was a huge Deep Purple fan, and pretty much anything Deep Purple was right up there. So I'd go around his house, and he would constantly try to convert me over to the Gillan albums, so that if I went and saw him, there wasn't at this period there wasn't much else that he would play. And like everything when you're 16, the more somebody tells you you should like something, the less you like it, and the rebel kicks in. So those are the reasons that I do like the cover of Future Shock. I mean, even at the time, I was tempted to buy it purely for the cover. I thought, I like that kind of comic science fiction look. Yeah, so I like that. I think it's a good look. It's sort of a bit like. Yeah, exactly. So it's got that kind of same feel as, say, Jailbreak or I suppose in a different sense ELO, but it's got that sort of science fiction-y kind of look to it, which I liked. So I nearly bought it just for the cover. I did see him live a few times during this period. I saw him live at Hammersmith Odeon, and I saw him live at a civic hall, fairly small civic hall during this period. And they were really good live. But normally when I see a band live that I'm not sure about and they're really good live, they encourage me to go off and buy the album and kind of convert me over to them. but it never happened with Gillan. I never came out of the concert going off wanting to buy the albums, not even Double Trouble, which, as we'll get onto, is partially live. So yeah, I came into this not having heard the albums for 45 years. Didn't remember, with a couple of exceptions, no recollections of the songs at all. So it was almost like
fresh ears.
Fresh ears, yeah. I mean, if you'd played recorded me listening, it would have been almost a reaction video. Because, as I say, with the exception of a couple of songs, no recollection of the songs at all.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you for that. I got into Gillan around 85, so just after Perfect Strangers. I was really diving deep into the Deep Purple family, Whitesnake, Rainbow, and Gillan was part of that. And I think the first album I got was Double Trouble. And then I explored the rest of the catalogue, whether it was Future Shock, Glory Road, Mr. Universe. They're wild. I just really gravitated to their experimental type of approach to music. They were simply the most experimental out there of the Deep Purple bands. Like, Coverdale and Whitesnake were very bluesy and a little bit more traditional. Rainbow, I think in that period, were going for a very straight American-orientated rock. But this band had something that was like punkish and kind of uber aggressive, and the arrangements were just wild. There was a little bit of jazz, there was a little bit of avant-garde, and we'll explore that as we go through the songs. And it really appealed to my tastes. But yeah, I got into Gillan probably after Perfect Strangers and exploring the Deep Purple catalogue, and I was just absolutely sold. So, all right. Well, why don't we talk about Gillan and Future Shock from 1981? Yeah. And we'll go into the songs, just a little bit of background. This album came out in 1981 on the Virgin label. Richard Branson, a little bit of a backstory. Ian Gillan tried to get a deal with all these different record companies. There was even a letter that I think I saw on his website that told him to F off. He was like persona non grata with a lot of records.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of like how I thought of him as well.
A dinosaur. But Richard Branson, God bless him, took a chance, and it actually paid off commercially because these albums got an audience and charted really well. Future Shock went to number 2. This album, Future Shock, is based on a 1970s book, and the basis of this book is about the accelerated rate of technology and social change, how it leaves people disorientated and disconnected. Sounds like 2025 to my ears.
I was going to say something topical, didn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is a very bleak opening track, Parish, written by Gillan, John McCoy, the wily thumping bass of John McCoy and Bernie Tormé. Do you recognise the symptoms of uncertainty? Are we serving any purpose at all? You're going the wrong way if you're looking out for paradise. You know your future is lying deep in your brain. It's all very hard-hitting. What do you think of this song?
Everything I've just said about what I thought at the time, I think is summed up in this song, in that it's as you say, quite punky. It's kind of got, it's new wave, as in the kind of lyrics and the futuristic aspect of it is quite new wavy. The sort of hard hitting guitar is pretty much new wave of British heavy metal. His lyrics is it's almost speed metal, isn't it? It's almost like early speed metal. And everything I disliked about it then, I like it now. So I haven't got the baggage today that I had there. I haven't got this. He's trying to jump on a bandwagon, or he's trying to sound like somebody else, or you know, at the time, if I wanted to hear new wave of British heavy metal, I was listening to new wave of British heavy metal bands, you know, the new bands coming through. So I had no interest in this. But in today, I think it's a really good opener. I think it's a really good song. I think it's fast, it's frantic. The only thing I don't think quite works on it is the keyboards. And he does this quite a lot, and I understand why. But the keyboards on a few of these songs just because at that time and that era, keyboards were more sort of synthesizer looking, you know, sort of maybe not quite Gary Newman, but that kind of Gary Newman type of sound. Where this is much more Hammond organs, sort of old school keyboards. And I think because of the song lyrics and the song's thrust about the future and looking ahead, it might have worked a bit better if it had Gary Newman type keyboards on it, pushing that sort of futuristic feel. So it's about the only thing on it that doesn't quite work for me is the keyboards. But as I say, that said, that's a fairly minor quibble because I think it's a really good song, good opener. Yeah, coming to this fresh because I didn't remember the song at all. I was really not. I was kind of thinking this was going to be a bit of a downer, this album battle, and this kind of turned me head straight away. So yeah, good start.
Yeah, I describe this band as being a more experimental version of Deep Purple because all the elements that are there. You've got a guitarist, a keyboard, bass, drums, and Gillan. However, the differences are that they've got a wider musical palette, and they're much more unstructured. They're much looser, and they just go off in different directions. Deep Purple are a little bit more rigid, and I love Deep Purple. But you've got a guitarist who's completely nuts, and I say that in a good way, Bernie Torme. He's like, he's wild. And he's one of those guitarists where you just don't know what direction he's going. He's obviously influenced by Hendrix, but, you know, the intonations, the melodies, the effects, it's all left field. And it's exciting to hear. They're just a very unpredictable band. I would describe this as a very unpredictable version of Deep Purple. It's sort of more exaggerated.
Yeah, and your comment about Bernie Torme is really good because I think one of the big differences between this and Purple is he was an 80s guitarist, wasn't he? He had that kind of feel of those new sort of new wave of British heavy metal, sort of young bucks that were coming in and sort of doing it faster, not necessarily heavier, but certainly faster and more aggressive. And I think that's the big leap between a Purple and this is that kind of aggressive playing that he brings.
An absolute showman and completely underrated. And, you know, it's no small fact that Ozzy, when Randy passed away, helped Bernie come over. And Bernie did his best, but it was like a square peg in a round hole. We could talk about that in another show, but put up his hand for bravery.
Absolutely. It was a make or break, I guess, for him, wasn't it? And unfortunately, it was more the latter than the former. I think.
Well, I don't think he disgraced himself. I think he sort of backtracked himself out of it respectfully. I don't think he disgraced himself. I mean, it wasn't totally successful, but
no. What I meant was it was kind of his opportunity for a big break in America, and
I don't think he wanted it. Though. I think he realised that maybe I'm a square peg in a round hole. The guy is a gypsy. He is. I think he is just totally unpredictable, and he's the kind of the X factor in this band for unpredictability. But you know, I really like this song. I think it's an outstanding opener. So we go to the next one, which is Night Ride Out of Phoenix. And this is Gillan in his storytelling mode. And he's a great storyteller. And one thing I've got to say straight off the bat, I think his lyrics, for most part, in this album are very sharp. He's on point. He can be a little bit lazy, but I think his lyrics are really socially observational and really good storytelling. What do you think of this song?
Um, Again, I think it follows on well from the first song. I like it. It keeps that momentum. It's got that upbeat, high energy to it. I find that, and this is probably what I didn't like at the time, but now I appreciate more. The verses he's talking them almost, isn't he? So it's almost like a rap in the verse, and
There's more of that
which
coming
doesn't
up.
quite, yeah, and that doesn't quite didn't certainly at the time didn't work for me, but now I suppose we're all more accustomed to that. And certainly it's not a new metal type thing, so it's not that extreme. So it doesn't sound wrong now like it did then. So yeah, I think it's good. Not quite as good as Future Shock, but again, for me, for my journey with this album, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still thinking, okay, I got it wrong back then. Yeah, I like this. So
It's got a nice riff that the song wraps around it. It's a
yeah,
really deep, heavy riff. I like the story behind it. So what happened? The story behind this song is that Ian, after a show with Deep Purple, he had arranged for him, his girlfriend, and the band's road manager to go for a horse ride at a ranch in Phoenix. So they forgot all about it. As you do, they go to the hotel bar. It's 2 a.m. and they realize, shit, we've got a horse ride. They turn up at the ranch, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and the horses are there. And they went for a ride in the desert. And he said it was just amazing. On one side was the night lights of Phoenix, and the other side was the silhouette of the material beauty of the desert. And he's written a song about
yeah,
it. So I think it's a really nice story.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
what's
I hadn't
come out of
realised
it.
that, and yeah. No, it is. It's
And
yeah,
hear the flow of the song. It's like them galloping. You got
yeah.
this.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's got
Yeah,
a bit of kinetic energy. So
and I suppose that in that context, the talking the verse as in telling the story kind of works as well. I suppose.
yeah, I think he's a great storyteller, and I'll always defend Smoke on the Water. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's just so basic." And look, it's genius, but you listen. Everyone knows the story because it's such a compelling
Yeah,
story, and his
yeah,
lyrics are just so well crafted. So
yeah.
anyway, number 3, Ballad of La Cynthia Express. So this was a band composition. What do you think of this one?
Well, for me, this is exactly that kind of speed metal, new wave of British heavy metal sound. Um, I still think others did it better at the time. So I do think he's chasing a bit of a trend, but I'm not as offended by it now as I would have been back then. But I do like how it's got that speed, and then it kind of slows down a bit in the middle and becomes, kind of more mid-paced, and then builds again at the end. So I kind of like that change in tempo. I think that works well. So again, another decent song. And the other thing I like about it, and I always like this when bands do this, it's not a ballad. So calling something a ballad kind of gives you an expectation, and then, as I say, you're into what is a very new wave of heavy metal kind of gallop or run on it. So that's good. I like that. I always like that kind of change in, between what the title tells you the song's going to be and what the song actually is. So.
Did anyone sound like them in the new wave of British heavy metal? I don't think so. I think they had I think they had a very unique sound.
I don't know. I saw loads of bands like that at the time, and
But not like
I
Gillan.
can,
I mean, I'm talking. They're wacky. They're really wacky.
yeah,
I'm going on the album. Obviously, I didn't see them live, but they're just sort of.
no,
You think that when they're in a studio, it's much more structured and committed to time signatures and a lot. I don't know if it's polished, but there's just something that sounds so experimental about them. It's as if, like,
yeah.
I get the feel that they might do 4 or 5 takes, and every take would be different. I don't know. There's
Well,
just
maybe, but I do. This does, yeah. I suppose what I'm about to say is what you've just said in a different way. A lot of it sounds like it's a one take song. You know, they haven't spent a lot of time on it. Now, you're right, they may have done 3 or 4 versions, and each one sounds different, which is why it sounds like a single take. I don't know. To me, it's got, you know, whether it's I'm trying to think of bands that it sounds a bit like. It sounds a little bit like Samson. It sounds a little bit like White Spirit, who were just fast paced, as I say. Even Raven a little bit. That kind of early speed metal. There's just. But his vocals don't. I'm not talking about his vocals. His vocals are different. But the actual guitar playing.
Those bands you named didn't have a keyboardist that would suddenly do.
No, the keyboards. I agree. The keyboards weren't there, but I'm talking more the.
Yeah, he wouldn't do a.
I'm talking about the riffing and the guitar.
Yeah. There wouldn't be flute bits. There wouldn't be jazzy bits. Even the drumming. I want to talk about the drumming. Mick Underwood absolutely hammers the skins. He is so heavy. What was he? I get the feel he's a bit of like a Charlie Watts. He looks very unassuming.
Well, I mean, we'll come. I've got the drumming on a couple of songs later as standout. Actually,
he's a great drummer.
I don't recall at the time watching him live and sort of going wow. But on this, particularly this album, I think his drumming's really good and stands out. And as you say, he's quite versatile. There are some where he's very loud and in your face, and then there's others where it's more subtle and it's driving the song, but isn't so obvious. So yeah, I agree. I think he is very good.
Yep. All right, so we'll go to the next song, and this was a little bit of a chart hit, No Laughing in Heaven, and it picks up one of Gillan's ongoing themes, poking at the sacred cows of religion, organized religion. And he was asked about this, what do the lyrics mean in this song? And he goes, look, everywhere I look, people are murdering each other in the name of God. People I want to avoid. And this is what the song's all basically about. And it is a rap. He's like this mad preacher, a rock and roll preacher.
Yeah.
He's really hamming it up, but it's theatrical, it's tongue in cheek, and it's a decent song. What do you think?
Well, this is one of the few songs I do know and remember. As you say, it was a single. Coming back to you saying experimental, this is quite quirky, is the word I'd use for this one. It's different to the rest of the album. I'm still not sure I like the verse the way he does the verses, that kind of rapping on the verses. But the chorus is catchy as hell, isn't it? I mean, it sticks in your head. You sing along to it when you listen to it next time. And the riff's great. It's got a fantastic riff. So whilst I don't think the verse quite works for me, I do admire the fact that they were doing something different. And I can see why it appealed as a single, because I think probably non-Deep Purple fans would have heard that and gone out and bought it, and maybe not buy the album, but buy the single because it kind of stands out and is a bit different. So again, I like the song, but that kind of rapping vocals on the verse, it's not for me. But as I say, I can understand why others would like it.
Was he ahead of his time, Parish?
Yeah, well, I think there's a bit of that. I mean, I talk about speed metal. Well, speed metal came later. There's a bit. Some of the faster songs are almost proto thrash, so there's an element of that. As you say, ahead of his time with the mixture of rap and rock, and of course nowadays there's people hugely overlap punk, new wave, and heavy rock. But back then they were more separated. So for him to be brave enough to bring those different strands together, there wasn't many doing that. Well, and that's probably the reason why many weren't doing it, because there wasn't many necessarily wanting it at the time. So yeah, I think he was definitely ahead of his time, and he was experimental, not experimental in the way of trying out entirely new things and doing things differently. Like I think somebody like I mentioned before, Gary Newman or John Fox were doing. They were doing something very different to what was going on previously. This is experimental more in he's got different, he's mixing up different styles and different ways and sort of mixing the whole thing up to see what it sounds like. So I think it's experimental in a different sense, but it's definitely, yeah, he's definitely trying to what's the phrase they use? Fusion, isn't it? He's almost like trying to fuse together different styles of music.
Absolutely. Well, an interesting, I haven't brought this into the conversation, but I will. Martin Popoff, renowned author, interviewed Ian Gillan and brought up the whole thing about the punk influence. And Gillan was, his back got up a little bit and sort of denied it. So it's a little bit like Steve Harris. Don't mention, punk and the influence of those.
Oh yeah, Def Leppard. We would never. Yeah, Def Leppard would never new wave of British heavy metal. It's that
absolutely.
Kind of thing,
so he absolutely denies that there was any. He was listening to punk. I think it's the other cats in the band that have brought these elements in.
Yeah, probably.
And he's just allowed it to happen, and it's happened. And he's just writing lyrics and melodies and. I think it's your Colin Towns. I think it's your John McCoy with that wonderful propulsive bass. Like his bass is bouncing around. It's like a Gang of Four album. He could easily play the bass on the Gang of Four. Post-punk was very bass and drums.
There's no denying. I mean, I'm not saying it's conscious, but he was touring and whenever I saw him, he would have 2 or 3 new wave of British heavy metal bands opening for them. So that kind of energy and enthusiasm of youth, I've got no doubt that rubbed off on him and the band going, okay, we need to be faster, we need to be more aggressive as well, because if we're not, we're going to get blown off stage. So I'm sure it might have been subconscious, but I think that having that kind of opening acts for them would have had an effect. And he might not have consciously wanted to go punk or new wave, but it was everywhere at the time, wasn't it? It was all over the radio in the late 70s, early 80s. And it would have, if he wanted to be modern, it would have been hard for him to avoid having those influences of that time, I would suggest. So,
yeah, I think it's the other guys in the band have brought it and he's just allowed it because he's a very traditional rocker. Elvis is king. He loves Elvis. And, you just look at his discography and he'll always throw in an oldie like New Orleans, which we'll be talking about shortly. So I think, look, if you didn't know anything about the history of Ian Gillan, Deep Purple, and you heard this album for the first time, you go, there's definitely some punk influences. And I just think it's probably the other guys have sponged it in. But whether it's Gillan, I don't think so, on the basis of testimonies. I think he's a bit more traditional, but he's just allowed it to happen. And it's happened.
But he seemed to be having fun with it, I have to say, when when I saw them live and saw them on the telly at the time. You don't get the feeling he's been press ganged into doing this. It does feel like he's doing it willingly.
Absolutely. Now, the next song is the most controversial, called Sacre Bleu, which means blue coronation, or it's French for shock. And the lyrics are a little bit dodgy. It's about a man who's led into a relationship or relations with a lady, and she accuses him of rape. And I think in the day, this got a little bit of slack for Gillan, which is a bit, Anyway, what do you think of this song?
It kind of, I thought it sounded a bit Motorhead-like. I mean, the lyric bit probably I was lost on me actually, but I'm not big on lyrics anyway, so I wasn't paying a lot of attention to them. But it sounds a bit Motorhead-like to me. It's got that kind of push and rhythm, that strong rhythm. Heavy riffing, very punchy, and I'm a big Motorhead fan, so I guess it doesn't sound like he's trying to rip off Motorhead. I would say it may be more coincidental. I don't know. I mean, back in the day, I may have been put off by the fact I thought he was ripping off Motorhead, but I don't think he is. I just think it sounds like them. But I think it's good. I think his vocals work well on the song. And yeah, it was another pleasant surprise for me as a song.
Yeah, lyrics aside, I don't think it's my favorite. I don't like his singing. He does all these little French accents and things. It's a little bit jokey. But one
Yeah,
thing
it
I
is a
do
little
like,
bit.
I do love Bernie Torme's squeals of the guitar. He's having a whale of a
Yeah,
time. I can imagine he's, probably throwing the guitar up in the air and spinning it around. I
yeah,
can imagine these guys just couldn't sit still in the studio. They'd just be moving. It's a band. It's a
yeah,
moving band. I feel like
yeah.
they wouldn't be just sitting on their stools and playing.
Well, and so far you're 5 songs in, and there's not really. I mean, despite the title of one of them, there's not really a slow song in there, is there? They're either very fast or, in the case of No Laughing in Heaven, a good mid-paced rocker. So, yeah, so 5 songs in, and there's no slow songs in there. So, which again, I think is probably why you get the feel it's more punky and aggressive and for me, British new wave of heavy metal, because that was what that kind of sound was. You didn't get many slow songs, so it's relentless one after the other. I think, which is a good thing for me.
It just dawned on me, and sometimes when we're having a chat, Parish, some things just come into my head.
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah,
There's another element to this whole punk thing that may have had a bit of a word in the ear to, maybe not to Gillan, but to the other folks, and that's one Mr. Richard Branson, Virgin Records.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting actually because I never thought of it that way. I assumed he was on Virgin because he was trying to play a new wave audience. I thought it was a deliberate sign to Virgin, and they're the people who are into Virgin Records, because there was a following. It's a bit like Stiff Records at the time. It was new, it was
Huge.
fresh.
They were a hip and happening label that was on the way up.
Exactly.
Simple Minds Culture Club, a
Yeah.
lot of other punk post.
All of that. So you kind of, I always thought at the time, Gillan had got themselves onto that label to appeal to that market, hence the sound of the records. You're probably right. It's probably the other way around. They got signed, and let's be honest, Richard Branson wasn't averse to signing sort of more traditional stuff. I mean, think of Tubular Bells, which kicked it all off. So he wasn't adverse to trying something like. But yeah, it's quite possible he was told, now you're on this record label, you've got to. There's a bit of a sound you've got to keep to. Yeah, quite possibly actually. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, good point.
New Orleans, rousing rendition. I really like this version. It kind of has that pace of that song Surfing Bird, It's got a phonetic punk feel to it. I know it's traditional rock and roll, but it's just so raucous and ramshackle. Maybe it's the Colin Towns Mrs. Mills piano tinkling the ivories. What do you think? What do you think of this song? I have to throw Mrs. Mills every episode or two.
Yeah, exactly. I loved it at the time. I actually bought the single. So, despite the things I said earlier, I think this is a great version of the song. It kind of fits in with other songs, a bit like Slade's We'll Bring the House Down kind of feel to it, with that driving drums, the vocals to it. Brilliant. I just thought it was a brilliant single, great choice.
Yes.
It's a bit different to the rest of the album. Listen to it, in the context of today. But I still really like it. I mean, I think it was whoever chose it as the to record it. It was a masterstroke, because I think this is why the album did so well. This was a pretty big hit, and I think you've got probably the Purple fans obviously went and got it, and etc. But I think this is what took him into a new audience at the time. This particular song, and got people out there buying the album who maybe wouldn't have done otherwise. So I think it was a masterstroke, and it remains one of my favourite cover version, best favorite cover versions of all time. If I'm not sure if I've been on a show to talk about cover versions with anybody, but if I was, this would definitely be in my top 5 or 10 favorite cover versions. I just think it's a great rendition.
Yeah, it's really heavy, and the keyboard.
Yeah.
Collins absolutely banging the keyboards. It's got a lot of rhythm. It's very percussive. Everything's very heavy. I think it's a great version. All right. Then we go to Bite the Bullet. Again, an opening track, side 2, quite a depressing topic. You look at the lyrics: when you're thrown out of work, got no money to eat, you've got nowhere to live, and there's holes in your feet, bite the bullet. Talking about the state of the world of London in 1981.
Yeah.
It's a pretty hard-hitting lyric.
Yeah, and at the time there was a few songs with that title. Obviously the AC/DC, but I'm sure there was a couple of others as well. I like it. I think his vocals are quite emotional. I think his vocals are good, and I always like songs that kind of have that vocal stop start with the guitar. I'm drawn to songs like that, and that works really well here. And this, I mentioned earlier that I'll come back to the drums. I think the drums on this is one of the highlights of the song. I think the drums is really powerful, and that piece again, partway through the song, where it's essentially just the vocals and the drums interchanging. I think works really well. So I like it. It's up there. I'm not sure it's my favourite on the album, but it's certainly up there for me. I think it's really good.
Okay, well said. Next one, a ballad. If I Sing Softly.
We've used this phrase a few times on some of these earlier albums, but it's an early power ballad, isn't it? You wouldn't call it a power ballad, but it's got a similar theme, as in it builds really nicely. I thought you
were going to say palate cleanser.
No, I think yeah. Well, it is that as well. It's sort of slowing us down towards the end, but I think so it's kind of like an early power ballad. I think it's a good song. Again, his vocals I think are nice and emotional in them. I'm not a huge ballad person, you can tell. So it's not one of my favourite songs, but yeah, it's good for what it is, and yeah, I quite like it. That's probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, well, you look at the lyrics; it's sex, and it's his version of Unfinished Symphony. Brings out the flute, bit jazzy. Singing, I don't know. There's something about his vocal line that I don't quite like. It's a little bit harsh. I don't know if he's singing a little bit flat. It's not my favorite.
I think it's the emotion. I think you can. His vocals are off a bit because he's
whether it's a harsh tone. Yeah. It's not my favorite vocal line. So not my favorite song on the album. Don't Want the Truth. This is a very strong lyric. You read the lyrics, and he's just basically, I don't want you, babe. Every lyric, there's so much piss and vinegar in this song. Every line, it's about somebody who's just completely blocking out somebody from their life. And it's a very strident, strong riff. What do you think of this song?
I think it kind of got that punky feel again, that aggression. I really like it. It's the vocals are good. I mean, despite your comment earlier, I think this sounds quite new wave of British heavy metal in its kind of pacing and speed. But I think what I like most is the guitar on it, and the guitar just I don't know. It's aggressive. It's heavy. Drives the song along, and I think what might have been an average song on is elevated by the guitar. I think the guitar takes it up and makes it much stronger. And is a, you know, it's now kind of after the ballad, it certainly kind of gets you back up again and gets you back into the speed of the overall album.
Well said. For Your Dreams. So this starts off with the haunting piano line of Colin Towns, and then you've got the pendulum bass of John McCoy, and then Underwood comes in with his drumming. What do you think of this song?
I suppose this, of all of the songs on the album, this is the one that reminds me most of Purple. It's kind of that epic, sort of classic rock type of feel to it. But it builds really well. Again, it's a good song. I think it sounds slightly out of place because, as I say, it sounds much more
traditional,
Purple-like traditional. It's almost like a throwback, maybe a leftover song. I don't know. So yeah, it's a good song, but it's not a great song. But it's a good. I mean, I quite like it when albums close with an epic. I think that's the best place to put an epic, mostly, if on an album. So I think it fits well in that part. It's a bit of prog rock in there as well, which is maybe what you'd expect as well, a bit from an old, you know, from a Purple kind of thing. So yeah, decent enough, but maybe slightly out of place for what's going on in the rest of the album, in my view.
Yeah, I slightly disagree. I think lyrically it's got closure because this song fits in with the title of Future Shock, because it's basically a bit of social commentary about life in 1981. We live in the wrong time. We're barely alive. We're living a wasted life. We're too many people, too many bodies. How can we survive life in the wrong time? So it goes back to the themes of the title, which is Future Shock. So the first song was Future Shock, and now he's ending it with a song where he's, I will fight for your dreams, and this is the state of the nation, you know, where they're just overcrowding and population explosion, and, you know, there's a bit of a, it's a bit bleak about the future, and it all goes back to the themes of Future Shock. So I think maybe from a musicology point of view, it's very traditional, but lyrically it's like full circle. It goes back to Future Shock, because we've covered all the lyrics of this album, and it's really the first and the last song that do cover Future Shock. The rest in between are more personal stories and relationships and all that sort of stuff.
As I say, I'm not big on lyrics, so I hadn't made that connection. But now you've said it, you're right. It certainly closes the circle, doesn't it, between the first and the last track? So,
you know, I was like, in the day, I was all music, but I think, you know, as I get older, I'm very much more into the lyrics, because it sort of opens the key of what were they trying to do, what were they trying to say. And, you know, there's a lot of great lyrics in some of these albums that you sort of bypass. And just reading the lyrics of this album, it's probably, I think it may be Gillan's best. He's really on point, bar one or two songs.
No, it definitely stands out. And I think it probably stood out at the time that he was doing things slightly differently. So, my wife says that it's probably just as well I don't listen to the lyrics with some of the songs I like.
All right, let's go to Double Trouble. Epic double album, racy cover, you know. Gillan, Two Ladies of the Night. Not big fussed on the album cover. There they are, the lads. And Yannick Gears. Yannick plays really well on this album. I mean, he cops a lot of flack in Maiden. What does he do? He's the third wheel. He just dances around. But I'm telling you, his playing is really, really strong on this album. And he's very much, a lot of the material on this album, he plays like Ritchie Blackmore. So we start off with I'll Rip Out Your Spine. What do you think of this song?
I think it continues from from the theme of the last album, and from the musically being aggressive guitar riffing, powerful vocals. Vicious title. One I wrote down: vicious title, vicious guitars, vicious vocals. It all fits together, but I like it. I think it's a great opening track again. And he certainly it sounds as if he's a man who's really pissed off on it. So yeah, it's a good track. I really like it. It's back then I would have thought it was too punky and he was trying to jump on the punk bandwagon, but today I love the aggression. So
cracker of an opener. I love this song to bits, and he's got so much piss and vinegar in his vocal delivery. The background to this, it was on his website. They said, "What's this all about?" And he said that he used to get rises out of an ex-band member called John Gustafson, and they'd have this thing where they would try to outdo each other in regards to a turn of phrase, like "I'll drag your lunch out from your nose." All these kind of really harsh sort of insults. And it sort of came out of this, "I'll rip out your spine."
I just assumed he had the ump with somebody. Somebody had really wound him up.
Yeah. But, boy, it falls into punk, doesn't it? It's just really aggressive.
It does, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's got a bass line or a bottom end that'd be on a Killing Joke album, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If you put jazz lead vocals, maybe remove the keyboards, Killing Joke.
No, I agree. One of the things we haven't really talked about before, and it made me think about it when you held the album. So if you hold the album cover up again and the back, not that side, the other side, just look at John McCoy on there. I mean, isn't he? I mean, he just had such a distinctive look, didn't he? With the bald head, the big beard. It almost looked like he was a man in disguise, that he would come off stage and he would take the beard and glasses off but such a distinctive look. He's co-written most of the songs on here, so credit to him with the co-writing. And he's just such a fantastic bass player. I mean, he's
only bass player I've ever seen that had a tremolo arm.
Yeah.
Big, beefy bass sound. And, you read interviews with him, he was absolutely gutted when Gillan folded.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's as much his band as Ian Gillan's band, isn't it? I mean, which is why I mentioned it. I mean, it could quite easily have been called Gillan McCoy as a band, because it's, I would say he's as important. But I just think he had that iconic look, stood out. His bass playing was different. He's obviously a good songwriter, and I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Yep. All right. So another thing about this album, there are some poppy songs, and it is an absolute head scratch that this didn't translate across the Atlantic. Now, I can sort of think Future Shock is a little bit experimental, avant-garde, out there, but this album, you can sort of feel that there are certain songs that are made for American radio. They could easily translate.
But the two singles of Future Shock, you would have thought would, the No Laughing in Heaven and particularly New Orleans, you would have thought.
I don't think so.
But you don't think so?
No. I think No Laughing in Heaven, because the religious connotations in America, that would have been poo-pooed. And New Orleans would have been too classic rock for to be top 10. But this album, there is definitely the next song, Restless.
Yeah.
Nightmare, Sunbeam. There's some songs here that released as singles. I could imagine should have got radio airplay. Anyway, Restless, bass heavy, got the drums, it's got a punk energy, and it's got a pop hook in the chorus to die for. What do you think of this song?
I love it. I love the song. Probably my favourite song on the album. And what appeals to me is it's kind of got that new wave storytelling. So something like a Boomtown Rats, Joey's on the Street Again, or Rat Trap. The fact that it's based around the story of Jimmy was again a Boomtown's Rat type of thing. But quite a few new wave songs had that storytelling to it. I suppose probably borrowed from Springsteen, but taken over into that punk new wave sort of sound. Very catchy. Probably, if this had been released in '79 as opposed to '81, would have been a big hit. I just think it was maybe a couple of years too late. There wasn't that many songs that sounded like this that was having big hits in '81, but there was certainly in '79. But yeah, I love it, and I think it's very catchy, very commercial, new wave, and yeah, my favourite song on the album.
Yeah, I kind of think that maybe Bernie wouldn't have written songs like that because he was just too wild and out there.
Yeah.
And just to backtrack, Bernie left the band because of money, and I think he was not liking the commercial direction. So I think there are some songs on this album that Bernie would not have been comfortable with as being too commercial. One thing I like about it is Yannick, for most part in this song, is just playing heavy chords. So he's not being too flashy. He's letting the song breathe, and he's playing to services the song. He's not,
and the bass playing is
good.
Yeah, and the bass playing kind of drives it along, I think, maybe more than the guitar, which is good.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favourite songs, and it should have been a hit. Honestly, I think
I just think it was a couple of years too late.
No, I'm talking about the US. US.
Oh, in the US, yeah.
Easily should have been.
Yeah.
Another thing about this album, bar one song, Gillan screams. He does the operatic. So a lot of folk talk about he blew his vocals out on the Born Again tour and did a lot of heavy screeching, and probably wasn't in the finest 1972 vocal shape for Perfect Strangers. But I actually put it back to this album, because you listen to this album, every single song, he does the dramatic scream and goes for the high. He goes for the, big notes, except one. And this is Men of War, He goes from this serene vocal and then just goes into this absolutely chorus scream, you men of oak.
Yeah.
Men of war. What do you think of this song?
It's another sort of epic, isn't it? Another sort of more traditional sort of classic rock sound, different to the first two. So the first two are very new wave and punky, as we've said. This one's much more, in my view anyway, sort of back to the early 70s Deep Purple sound. His vocals are good. I think the lyrics, well, it's atmospheric, I think. I mean, I can't remember the lyrics, but it does give it is atmospheric. I prefer the previous two songs, but yeah, I think it's still a strong song.
Okay, fair enough. Then we have Sunbeam. This has a really simple, hooky, kind of heavy riff, but it's still melodic enough and poppy enough to not offend radio. I could imagine that this, would have been chewed up by radio. What do you think of this song?
I think the chorus lets it down a bit. It's almost as if the chorus is an afterthought. The rest of the song, I think, is strong, and I like it. I think the guitar break in the middle is really good.
It's Blackmore. Close your eyes, and you can imagine Richie doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if the chorus was stronger, then I think it could have been a single. But the chorus is almost, as I say, an afterthought and thrown in there. But it's a good song to follow Men of War, because if Men of War was a bit of a downer and sort of more epic, then this brings it back to that sort of more catchy, poppy,
hope and optimism,
new wavy. Yeah.
Lyrics of hope,
exactly.
and optimism. Yeah, okay. The next one was another single. Again, inexplicably, this should have been a big hit in the States if it got the chance. Written by Colin Town. Nightmare. I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's probably the most commercial out of all the Gillan songs on this album.
Yeah. Well, it's a great rocking song. As you say, very commercial. It's the kind of what songs I like. If Restless is my favourite, this is my close second. You can see why those two were picked as singles because they're the more commercial. And as I say, Restless I felt was maybe slightly too late for being a hit. But Nightmare, I'm surprised wasn't actually more popular and wasn't a bigger hit because it's more in keeping with what was being played from a rock, sort of heavy rock point of view at the time. So I'm surprised that wasn't a hit. But I'm not surprised it was the first choice as a single because I think it is probably the obvious single on the album.
It's got a bit of a Russ Ballard feel. You know how
I suppose that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. You know how Rainbow used to mine the Russ Ballard songbook?
Well, that's what I meant by when I was saying that this was more in keeping with what was being a hit at the time.
Yeah, this feels more Russ like Ballard
that.
song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why I'm more surprised that this one wasn't a hit because it's kind of got that, I don't know, a bit more like Rainbow were doing with their singles at that time.
Yep.
Yeah, but really good. Sorry, you were giving your thoughts on it.
No, I agree with you. I think I've got nothing much more to say. I just think it's probably one of my favourite songs of the album. It's commercial, it's catchy, it's hooky. Hadley Bop Bop. This is a bit of a jazzy hard rock workout. What do you think of this song?
Well, it's a weird title, and the song doesn't disappoint, does it? I mean, it is quite, and particularly in the day. I mean, nowadays it maybe not quite so much, but definitely back then this was definitely a little bit off the wall, a bit different to what was maybe you were expecting from a heavy rock band. But I like it. Again, I think it finishes off what is a relatively short studio. So I mean, it's 6 tracks, so it's pretty short. The studio aspect of Double Trouble, but I think it finishes it well and is a good summation, I think, of where Gillan was at that time, which is it's a good rock song. It's quite playful. It's off the wall, but it's melodic, and it's energetic. So it's kind of got everything about Gillan wrapped up in it. And so good song to finish with. I like it, but it's not a standout for me on the album. So
yeah, it's probably my least favorite, but that's not to say I don't enjoy it. Just the keyboard sound on this one is a little bit unusual. I normally like the Colin Towns keyboards. I differ from you a little bit slightly, but I just think his choice of keyboard sound on this one sounds a little dated. And he's definitely playing that John Lord role where he's the keyboard line is matching the guitar line and doing this rapid melody line, but doesn't quite work for me. Life Goes On. I think this is another one of my favorite tracks on the album. Again, it's a bit of a depressing one. There's a lyric here. He goes, "I am so depressed, I must be in a bad dream. There is no use thinking of what might have been. I am just one, soon I'll be none. Life goes on." You look at it, it's a very bleak lyric, and it's just basically about a character that's near the end of his life and he's looking back and it's, there's no sunbeam.
So Life Goes On. I really like it. It's another great up-tempo rocker. It's, along the lines of some of those earlier tracks. Love In's vocals on it. He seems to be having a great time. The guitar drives it along. It's got a great riff. Really enjoyed it. I do like the way it ends as well. It kind of builds a bit towards the end, and then suddenly just sort of fizzles out, which works really well. Really good track. Really enjoyed that one,
folks. This is probably one of my favorite songs on the album, and yeah, Gillan plays a character in the vocal lines, and a lot of emotion, a lot of sincerity, a lot of emotion, but it's very dark. So it's the complete opposite to Sunbeam, very dark. And then we go to the epic song at the end, which is called Born to Kill, 9 minutes and 28 seconds. This is like a song in 3 parts. It's like 3 movements. It's an epic. Ian Gillan said this has got a bit of a Charles Darwinian texture to it. It's about fighting for survival. It's about human. You have a piece of land, you build a house, and then, you know, you're defending your family and it turns into war. He's talking about life, the universe, and everything. It's a very deep philosophical type of song. I don't know all of it works. A lot of it, when it starts off very quiet and it builds up, and you basically got Ian Gillan and the piano, and then the second part, you know, it gets very rhythmic. You know, Colin Towns bangs out this really percussive type of keyboard line, and then Underwood with the drums, and then it speeds up and goes into something that's kind of rapid fire, and the band are all singing, and it's kind of like a gang chorus. It's epic. I don't know if I think it's totally successful, but I appreciate the that he's had a go in respect of it. He's tried to do something that is kind of epic, but I don't know if it totally works for me.
Okay, yeah, Born to Kill. Not necessarily the sort of thing I like. It in part sounds very early 70s classic rock, quite a deep purple feel to it. It starts, doesn't it, with that haunting phase to the song, and I quite like that bit actually. Probably my favourite part is that opening section. But it's proggy, so it merges from that into a more aggressive rocky sound, and it builds up. But what I do like about it is, out of everything on both these albums, it meshes the more traditional Deep Purple sound with this Gillan 81 new wave of British heavy metal sound, and you get both coming together on this song. It's 9 minutes. So for me anyway, it's a bit too long, but I do like that meshing together the two styles. But it could have been a bit shorter from my point of view. It should have been, yeah, it should have been cut down really. But definitely a highlight to finish on, because it brings I keep saying it really, just brings the styles which are quite different together for me. So yeah, good song to finish with.
Big themes. So there we have it. So then it goes into a live album, which was recorded at the Reading Festival in August 1981. And also there was a track that was done at the Rainbow in August 1981. Without going track by track, what are your overall thoughts on this live album?
I thought it was fun. I mean, I tend to like live stuff. I think this was quite typical of what was being done at the time, with singles and albums, where they would include a live album as almost like a bonus, and quite often it would be a festival like a Reading or something like that. And this is what I know. This is actually intended to be a double album with a studio and a live, but it does feel to me more like a kind of a bonus album. So you know, the main album's the studio album, and in that context, I think it's good. I like it. It's fun. I think the version of Trouble's good. I like that. You can tell that the band's having fun up on stage. I think I'm trying to remember now. I might have been at Reading not Reading, at the Rainbow concert, because I saw Rainbow. Sorry, I saw quite a lot of bands at the Rainbow, and I'm pretty certain I did see Gillan at the Rainbow. So I may even
If
be
you
in the
believe
crowd.
me, so off Glory Road, if you
Yeah.
believe me, he does that. That's the song
So
from
I'm going to
Rainbow.
have to go back over me diary, me rock diary that I had at the time of the
Yeah,
concerts, and just check which one I was at.
yeah,
I wasn't at Reading though, so for the bulk of it, I wasn't in the audience. But yeah, I think it's good, and as I say, it's fun. And certainly in the context of it's almost like a bonus album. I think it's good stuff.
yeah. I'm not as favourable as you. I get actually more joy out of listening to the crowd go off, and you
Yeah.
hear somebody with the horns and the repartee, but the mix is terrible. It's really, really
Well,
muddy.
that's why I said I think it's more like a bonus album, really, because
Yeah,
they've not put a lot of put a lot of effort, have they, into making glossing it up, I suppose. And but yeah,
yeah.
I always like albums that you can hear the audience and you can
Oh,
almost
the
feel like you're
audience. I
there,
mean, the audience
and
is
from that respect,
the
yeah,
audience reaction's gold, and that gets 1 or 2 points. But mutually assured destruction, it's just completely muddied. Um, you know, I didn't even like. I mean, I heard that song for the first time live, and when you actually hear the song in the studio, it's okay. This is what it's supposed to sound like.
yeah,
Let's be honest; it's a little bit ramshackle live. I don't know if it's their greatest live performance. The drum sound on Mick Underwood, is terrible. It sounds like he's through a wind tunnel. It's kind of this really bad echo, and I know he's a much more nuanced, subtle drummer
yeah.
than what comes out on this album, because it just comes out this bang, 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 this echoey, this really bad echoey drum sound. It's terrible. This could have been the album that broke them in America. Couple of things. Album cover sucks. They did a different album cover. If they made it a single album, and if they pushed those singles, which Restless and Nightmare, Gillan may have had a bit of a hit on his hands. And he says the reason why Gillan broke up is because that he was losing money. He was funding the
Yeah.
band, and that's why he broke up the band. So, can't be fun for him if he's funding the band and they're losing money, which is a bit of a head
And they were.
scratch, because they're having some chart success. They're selling out.
Well, they are, and I think the thing though is that they were never as big as Rainbow or Whitesnake. Both of those seem to be able to elevate themselves. So he's playing a Rainbow, and the others are playing Hammersmith Odeon, and Hammersmith Odeon is probably twice the size, if not more, than and the sort of the tours that they were certainly doing better, Rainbow and Whitesnake. So I just think it didn't quite have that same appeal, and I think part of it is probably the quirkiness. I mean,
experimental.
both Rainbow and Whitesnake really tapped into the resurgence of the heavy rock and heavy metal fans, and you saw a lot of. I have to say, you did see a lot of Gillan patches on the back of people's battle jackets. So there was definitely an appeal there, but they just didn't quite elevate themselves up as much as the others did, and I think they were being overtaken by some of the new wave of British heavy metal bands. You've got Iron Maiden coming through, you've got Leopard coming through, and I think they were being a bit left behind by what was going on.
Absolutely. So, look, if I was Virgin, I don't know what their distribution deal was in America, but by all means, do the double album in the UK. The fans would love it, reservations and all with the live disc. But if I was in America, I would push the single disc.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at for me. All right, mate.
I think you're right, and I suppose the thing with the live album for me is it's one of those, and I like this for it, and I like other. It's one of those you almost have to be there to like it. You can see the people who were at Reading would have gone out and bought this album as a memento of that concert. And I think the fact it's raw, it's like just a snapshot in time. They haven't played about with it. They haven't overdubbed it. And so you, for good or for bad, you get a feel for what Gillan sounded like at a festival in 1981. Whereas some of the other live albums, you don't get that. I don't think you get that feel really. What you get is the studio tarted up version. So
okay, so Parish, we've had a bit of a chat. We've gone through the songs, and what is your pick as your favorite album of the two?
yeah, so as I say, coming into this, I was expecting to be viewing this on the basis of which do I like least, which one do I like or dislike least, which one do I like a bit more, but not liking either really. And so this has been a really good, positive listen. I'm definitely going to go out and see if I can get hold of both albums and buy them. And I think on balance, it is close, but I think on balance, I'm going to go with Future Shock purely because I think there's just more songs on it that I went back to and listened to over and over again, to be honest. And whilst I really like Double Trouble as well, I think I'd give it to Future Shock, and I think the difference in scoring is pretty close. So, and this surprised me how much I liked them. So, Future Shock I would give 8.5, and Double Trouble I'd give 8. So it's close, and they do both sound. They kind of sound. I mean, they came out the same year, and despite the different guitarists, that there is a similarity between the albums. I think they do come as a pair in some ways, and there's not a lot of for me critically, there's not a huge difference. But I'd go 8.5 for Future Shock and 8 for Double Trouble.
I have literally changed my mind over the course of the show because I came into this show with a view on a certain album. But in talking it through and reminiscing about the songs, I've changed my mind. I think I will give the nod to Future Shock. I think there's a lot more variety, experimentation. You've got a chemistry with this group. I think this is the classic lineup. And the wonderful Bernie Tormé, his guitar. I just think there's a lot of it, there's so much wildness in his playing. You listen to the songs and you just don't know where he's going. But that's what I like. It's got a little bit more danger and edge. It's less commercial. And I think lyrically, from a songwriting perspective, I think it's Ian Gillan at a peak. And he's had a number of peaks over his career, and this is definitely one of them. So it was a well-deserved number 2. Should have probably gone to number 1. And I think Future Shock. I love Double Trouble. Not a big fan of the live album, but the studio is wonderful. Bar some reservations on Born to Kill, which I think in certain parts is a little bit ham-fisted. But otherwise, I think that is an outstanding album. So I'd say 8.5, Future Shock 8, Double Trouble.
Can I just say, Peter, that I really enjoyed this show and the build up to it, because I would have missed out in enjoying these albums because I just haven't listened to them. I had a total view of Gillan as a band, and I wouldn't have been listening to these. So it's been a brilliant voyage of discovery for me to go back and listen to this, and I've really enjoyed it. I've been shocked. I don't know about Future Shock, but it's only been a shock by how much I like these. So thank you for putting that challenge to me because it's been really good.
Oh, absolutely, and it's a pleasure, and that's what this show's all about. And folks, please revisit our previous show. We did an album battle on Whitesnake, Come and Get It versus Ready and Willing, and that was another ding-dong battle. and I think there was only like a half a decimal point. This is what this show is all about. And look, please leave your comments. Tell us what you think of these Gillan albums. What's your favorite song? What you think is the best Gillan album? Maybe you think it's Glory Road. Maybe you think it's Mr. Universe. But we love reading your comments. And look out for the Parish and I. We are going to do Motorhead. So we're going to pick 2 Motorhead albums, Ace of Spades versus One Perfect Day. So that will be on the schedule coming soon to Rock Daydream Nation. So, Parish, again, wonderful to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Folks, please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation so you can see all this Deep Purple family content and a lot more. And one thing's for certain, you'll see me and Parish doing more shows in 2025. All the best, and cheers.
Thank you.